Beautiful. So we are live. This is the first session of a series of 10 of Tales in Dialogue. And this session is facilitated by Ao, who is going to get the word in a moment. And I'm also going to be a participant in this session together with Luciana, Margot, and Natasha. So welcome, everybody. And I pass the word to Ao.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm very, very excited to open up this conversation, and I'm very excited to speak with strangers. So I've thought this morning a lot about what it means to engage honestly with strangers, and we've never met before, so I'm very much looking forward to it. I prepared a small check-in question just for us to touch base before getting into the dialogue. And the question is, have you recently done something for the first time? So I will answer first and then give the word to the group. Recently, I let someone who hurt me take care of me, and I realized that it was the first time that I've done this. So here it is.
Yeah, I have a very other example, but recently I've slept in a hotel room with a piano for the first time in my life.
So the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear the question is an experience I had last week where I lost my cat, and this was a very new experience because it had to do with grief, it had to do with let go, and just feeling, how fragile life is. I was with him, so that's I think the experience. I was with him when the passing occurred. So this for me was I was very sad, but incredibly enlightening to see how, like just like this moment, and then it's on the other side. So yeah, that's what came to me.
I for the first time helped a group of very poor people to reopen a water fountain they had that was covered with mud. So it was I was crying because we were just digging into that thing, into the mud, and then the water came out. So here where I live now in Sao Paulo, we have a very severe water shortage. And for me, it was very strong to do that. So maybe that's the most impressive and new experience I've had in the last years.
Well, nothing so incredible, but for the first time I did sushi myself this week.
That's incredible.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your lovely and diverse check-in. So now we already did this little hand gesture, but I would like to bring the physical talking piece that I brought today. Is a stone. It's a random stone, and I have this book about people who feel guilty about stealing stones in national parks and then send them back and apologize. And this is the last stone that I kept, that I hold no guilt to. So when I give it here, then it becomes a symbolic and virtual one, and that's our talking piece for the rest of the dialogue. So thank you again for the check-in. I found my way to bring the seed topic into the space today. So it has visuals and it has audio. So I'm gonna share one window. Can you see my screen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, now, yes.
Okay. So, in a yellow house, An old man was being read to by a boy. They took turns reading to one another, and now it was the boy's turn. The boy's name was Mira Baba. He was reading the tale of the child who climbed a ladder that led to another world where he was given magic gifts by giants. He stopped reading for a moment. Is it true, he said, that there is another world beyond ours? The old man was silent for a long time. Mira Baba was used to these silences and had learned to read them. From the old man's silence, this it was what the boy read. It was asking questions that got our ancestors into this place. Yet you go on asking them? This is what the boy sensed all his life whenever he asked a question that was not answered. He came to understand that questions were not answered by answers. They were answered by subtleties of silence. Mira Baba was about to go on reading when, to his surprise, the old man began to speak. He spoke in a rasping but soothing voice. It may have been approaching death that moved the old man to such an uncharacteristic act. One day, my boy, you must take a leap into the unknown and discover what has been hidden from us. The old man paused. Mira Baba heard, in the silence that followed, the beating of an eagle's wing outside the window. For a moment, he heard his own heart beat. The old man had not answered his question, but had only caused him to listen more intently to the silence. So on top of the introduction that I just read from The Freedom Artist by Ben Okri, I just made this selection of images that are just very soft textures for our minds to kind of think about what narratives are. Here it is. So as you read, I guess before today, the theme that I had is beyond reality and fiction. And the question is, how do narratives allow us to express the inexpressible? So I want to remind, before we start, the soft guidelines that we have for dialogue, which is be precise and brief, speak from the heart, and listen as you would like to be listened to. I have a starting sound for this dialogue.
What is reality? That's what like the title brought to my mind the first time I read it. So yeah, what is reality? Like nowadays, also with all these new technologies, also like I feel the threshold and the limit is more and more blurred. Also.
Still getting used to the system. Um, I remembered as you were speaking, I remember that I was in dialogue with another writer the other day, and she said that fiction is more true than truth because it's reality mediated by the soul. And so I think that's very interesting because we really, really need different stories that can tell us something new about the world that is in a deep, deep crisis. So that's my stimulus for you. Maybe fiction is more true than truth.
Well, it's funny that you say so because I love reading fiction. I'm a writer, and I went to the Dutch Film and Television Academy to study screenwriting, and that is fiction. But during my studies, I found out that I was actually more touched by nonfiction, so the stories that are happening in real life, and that I wanted to tell them in a quite literal way. So to make sure that it's also beautiful to read nonfiction and it's not only opinions and truth or not truth. So that's the way I look at it.
Before anthropology, I studied theater in France, and there is this saying of Jean Cocteau, which really fascinated me, and I could see the experience of it while learning how to direct theater, is that theater is a lie that tells the truth. And there is nothing more honest than to demonstrate yourself as, this is a lie. I'm coming on stage as an actor. You know this is not real life, but I'm gonna tell you something through that lie, and then can come sincerity. And another thing that echoes now with what Natasha was saying, I was exploring the work of this Chinese documentary director, Wang Bing, who was saying exactly that. Stories are everywhere in the world. It's just a matter of finding them, and then your own sense of style comes in. But why writing a story, a fiction story, in the comfort of your home when you can go outside in the world and there are still so many stories that haven't been told and that should be told? Yes.
Yeah, I do agree. But also, I think it's so great that we have so many ways and forms of telling stories. So I feel indeed the same, but it's also my curious nature. I always love doing research and talk to people and go to places I've never been. And I do understand that that's not for everyone and not even for every writer. So I can really enjoy, the smart spaces someone puts in their head. But I do see in my country, at least, that the really popular books are, yeah, not the most intellectual ones or not best written, and that's what I feel sorry about, because then I think, oh, you're just sitting in your room and just thinking, oh, I write this so I make a lot of money, or people will like it, or it's a lot of sex or whatever. So I do think there can be beautiful things from fiction, but well researched and well thought through.
Mm.
So when we bump, we just decide, like, by the look, who is going. So I'll just take this, Luciana. So what comes to me is, yeah, I liked, I think one of you said, Luciana, about speaking from the soul. So some connection with the soul, and that has to do, yeah, I think the question, what is reality and what is true, can go into so many levels in philosophical spheres. But I think the soul, there's something to it that is very, yeah, it's very authentic. It's very genuine. There's something quite individual as well, personal to the soul. Like each one of us has a soul. And when we touch base with that, there's something that can get expressed. It can be in the way we are, like nonfiction, in the way I am in this world. If this is then fiction, can also be another stream. But the way that I interact with people, the way I live my life, yeah? If I'm connected to my soul through that, there is a quality there. And this can also be explored very much, I find, in this curated realities that are the stories, that how I see. There's so much that can be explored there and expressed. So yeah, this authenticity and this genuine, like something about a feeling of being genuine. I think that's very powerful, be it in the fiction or be it in our day-to-day lives. And one of the images you showed, Ao, there was something written. There were two men sitting, I think, and there was something written there. And for me, what stayed with me is something like, when I started, I knew anything. I didn't know anything, or something like this. And just brought me to this feeling of, feeling of knowing. Yeah, when you're really connected to your soul, it's an act through it and express through it. It's a different level from knowledge, I find. It's a different sphere of action and expression. So yeah, this is what came to me, putting back.
So as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking that I'm right now in a country that's going through something that's beyond fiction. I never imagined we would go through what we are going through now, with this president, absolutely insane person in power. But at the same time, what moves me, it maybe is the same as Natasha. What must be said? Because we are going through such urgent times that the question for fiction and non-fiction, it's as if it's not that important if it's fiction or not, but what must be said? Where are you putting your energy? There's no time to lose. Mm-hmm. So for a fiction writer, it's the same question. So for example, in Brazil, there is a lot of many books on Black culture and what is to be Black in this country, right? And putting down some myths like, oh, there is no racism in Brazil, which is a lie. So what must be said? For me, is what moves me. For example, right now I'm in a research that it's taking me a lot of time. I never wrote such fiction that made me engage in so much research. But at the same time, it's fiction, because it has to be a synthesis of all my impressions about that context I'm trying to picture. So it's like you put yourself at service to be, in a way, a photographer of that reality, to say, this reality needs more light. I need to, for example, I'm writing something now that is about women that are in prisons in Brazil, right? We have, in the last 5 years, 600% more women in prisons in this country. So it's not like, oh, I'm an activist, I'm wanted to write about that. No, I just got to meet a person that her sister is in prison. She's one of those people. So I'm I just feel that that must be said.
Mhm.
And maybe that's something that brings us together, being it fiction or non-fiction. It doesn't quite matter.
Mm. And this is exactly why in the title I chose the word beyond, to go beyond that binary of reality and fiction. So the territory of beyond reality and fiction makes you see the unity in both. And now, Luciana, you spoke of that unity and that sense of urgency. It doesn't matter that it's fiction or reality. What matters is what is being said and by whom and why and the timing of it. So now in all your impressions. Now you brought a lot of impression, and I can feel from here, even though I'm miles away from you, that you're deep in research and that you're deep in like a real experience. You're bringing things from many different perspectives. But now, as the first impression that I had when you spoke is, to me, the notion of representation. Now you mentioned what does it mean to be Black in Brazil, which is a conversation that is happening across the world from a colonial perspective. What does it mean to be racialized in the world? And this has to do with representation. So then if it's done in a documentary form, if it's done in a fiction form, it matters very little. Like, what is the essence of it? So then we can even, when we see that notion of essence, we can even go back to that notion of soul. So now we have essence, soul, origin. Slowly we're getting to a core. We're getting to something that is like very deep. And I guess the more I think of that depth, because I'm personally very challenged with the notion of authenticity. I do not understand what authenticity is. I'm very confused with it, the idea of a singular form of truth or a singular form of authenticity. But what we can get to here, if we think of that core, to me, then it becomes beyond language. Like there is, language is a form, is a way to relate to the world, is a way to see the world and then translate the world. And when I think of authenticity, when I think of that notion that goes beyond reality and fiction, that goes beyond binary, then the words are missing. I'm unable to express something. So I feel that there is perhaps something that must be said that is beyond language.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful what you said, and I remember 2 years ago I was working with one curator that is also very interested in, let's say, decolonizing the imaginaries, especially in the art world, for example. And she was the first one that really also or taught me that we need new words to express like what is what is like in the world, but also how much sometimes our language is violent or is already creating a reality that is violent. And then for example, there was this this example with resources. For example, resources has already a meaning of very like I can take extractive, no? And I had never thought about how the language was built or was actually creating a reality that is extractive by essence. And since then, I have to say, I am very encouraged. I encourage myself. I try to do it more, to question words and maybe to find other words to express something. Sometimes to be more in I don't know, yeah, or to create another reality, at least.
It's very interesting what you all say. Somehow in my life it connects, so that's really interesting. What you said, Luciana, and also you, I think, Breno, about speaking from the heart and your truth. It should not be the truth, I suppose, but it's your truth, and for me, that is authenticity. Um, I've always done it, and I don't know, it's just in my character. So, for example, I'm Jewish, and I work a lot with Israeli and Palestinians to put the dialogue. And I don't know, it's just something I think it's beautiful, but obviously a lot of emotions come up with the Middle Eastern conflict. So people are always angry at every side mainly. And also I'm very interested in my own family history, Holocaust related, etc. And from very young age, people always told me, oh, please, your subjects are always so heavy, and why would you do this, and can you not write a comedy or something? And when I was a bit younger, I was really caught off guard by it. I thought, oh shit, maybe I should do something else. I bore people. Oh, I'm always that Jewish girl. It's sometimes even how they called me. But then I think a few years ago I thought, but it's I don't know even if it's my power, but those are the stories I know I lived through, and I do want to tell to the world, not only because I'm hung up with the past or it's my family history. I think that's always something I think about. Is it private or is it personal? And private is for me, and personal is something that can be interested for others too, because I think it's much more universal than people might think. And now I think when I look at the world right now, obviously we have different problems than in Brazil, but we are also quite hung up on populist parties here, and racism and anti-Semitism. And I do think I'm able to tell those stories because I know them, and I try to make them broader. So when I tell the story about my family history during the Holocaust, I always say, for example, my grandfather, who lived through the Holocaust, always said the Holocaust should not only not happen again, never happen again to Jews, but to no one at all. And it's really interesting because since I just thought, whatever, every person in the world can say, write a comedy or you're too heavy. I don't care. It's the stories I want to tell. I actually feel I'm being taken serious, and it's really necessary that people stand up and talk about the stories they think they should tell. No, I wanted to close it, so take it over.
I'll take it. Thank you, Natasha. Like, I got goosebumps with you speaking. And yeah, I think there's something so beautiful about really connecting to ourselves and exposing that, opening this up to the, so being personal, but being like open so others can get in touch with that. I think there's something really powerful about it as well. And it connects to what was said before. I think Luciana said there is a level of something that just must happen. There is this notion of being in service to something that needs to happen, that must happen. And yeah, I think what is coming to me is like these different levels of, like the personal, us as individuals, and we have this individual sense of being, and then there is this bigger collective. And the must happen is also connected to both, because you have the must in a collective sphere, like in the case of Brazil now that Luciana brings up. This is a political level, and it has to do with a collective. Yeah? And what must happen there, then I question sometimes as well. And obviously in Brazil, this is a big topic as well, because not everybody is unanimous of what must happen. So how do you, there's something that must happen in an individual personal level that needs to be honored. And when we manage to really open it up, it's very powerful and beautiful. But when this also connects to something bigger, something collective that the world as a large is really needing, then it's almost like, I don't know, the level of potency of this gets to 1,000. It's like, it just becomes super powerful. Yeah, and I think this happens in our own stories as well, because our stories are connected, if we want it or not, to something bigger. They are connected to our generations before us. They are connected to a collective in many levels. So I'm just thinking of this connection of the individual with the collective.
And I'm so glad that you brought this because it was already resonating very much while I was listening to Natasha. The personal to universal, that notion of the individual through the collective and the interconnection of things. And that's something I feel maybe in contemporary society has been slightly hijacked into that notion of self-care, and there is something that oversimplifies that notion, but there is something that is quite fundamental, that we're social animals and we echo another, and you are the result of your environment, the environment is the result of you moving through environment, and it's just this dance, this thing that goes together. And this is why for me the notion of going beyond binary is so necessary, because the notion of binary is this against that, but if you go beyond it, then you see that it's just a movement between both. And this relates to anything. So when Natasha talks about the Middle East and Israel and Palestine, this is such a binary. The story of Palestinians, then the stories of Israelis, and then kind of confront them together. But just see the unity in it, no conflict. It's not Israel against Palestine, it's Israel and Palestine. Then the experience. Now, what is echoing to me is the fundamental psychology in the West that has been built and that has been explored by Jews, and seeing like the Jewish elites of Central Europe exploring trauma in front of everyone and expressing something that was brand new, how to sustain, how to overcome that trauma. And there they made the personal universal. They look at the personal trauma of the Jewish collective and they made it universal to the world, to just be like the self aches, the self is traumatized, the self has been oppressed. This is how it feels. This is how we got out. And then they made it so poetic and they expanded. I think this is the vulnerability, to be vulnerable enough in front of others and show this is how I healed. And to me, this is the power of story, to just expose how you heal, how you're looking for freedom, how you're looking for solace, how you're exploring your trauma. And if you see someone doing it in front of you, you're like, thank you so much. Like, I'm feeling it. You showed your way. It's not going to be exactly mine, but you showed me how it feels. And that is already something.
Beautiful. Sorry, I notice I'm talking a lot, but I'm so enthusiastic about everything everyone says. I really feel you, and that's also exactly, I think, what's the power of a good story. Doesn't matter what form, because I think in Western Europe, at least, indeed, we're quite individualized. And we think a lot about, oh, what's good for us, and oh, this is how I think, and I have to put it into the world either through Twitter or through another medium or in real life. And I think the beauty is curiosity. I think for every writer or maker, it's so important to be curious to the other story, because for me, I'd never been to Palestine, and from the Jewish community, I sometimes could hear, "Oh no, but Palestinians are really dangerous, and they don't understand their trauma." And so, what did I do? I went there to meet the people. Had a wonderful time. Talked about their traumas. Talked about what they experienced. Put it next to my story. Talked about it, and it was the purest form of dialogue that could ever exist. And I really would hope, and I think as a writer, obviously I have like my little tools, and I can say, oh, I'm going to write a book about it, so I can go there. It's my, it makes me less scared to just go to a country or go to a community I don't know, because I said, yeah, I have to do it for work. But it would be so wonderful if like many other people also do it, because of course, we think things about others that may not be positive. I mean, it comes to us from the media or from what we hear or from family. But in the end, I always say, and it sounds quite cheesy, but we're all human beings with the same kind of feelings, with the same kind of desires, with the same kind of anxieties. And that is what makes every story and every contact universal. So that's always what I hope more, and that's what I try to do in my work. It's quite nuanced. My father always called it radical nuance, but I think it's really important to give a little bit love to the world through my work, to show that dialogue can actually work without being naive, though.
Let me unmute. Oh, you're frozen for me. I got the word, but I was suddenly frozen. Can you hear me? Oh,
We can hear you.
okay. So it's very beautiful to listen to you, Natasha. I can imagine Natasha in Palestine sitting with the people in a circle and talking. What I was thinking while you were speaking is that there is, in the same way that there are things that must be said, we must build the silence to listen. That's one of the most difficult things nowadays, because we are so dirty with so much information, so many paradigms, so many good ideas that we already are inhabiting our brains. That's very dangerous. We have no silence to listen, and this emptiness is the basis for empathy, right? You don't go to Palestine and start making a speech about the trauma. You have to listen first, right? So you need to build that vase of silence where dialogue and listening can happen. And that's very difficult. That's the basis of empathy. And I also work with sustainability and been doing some regeneration work here in forests. And the other day, it came this idea to me that if people have no empathy for other humans, how are they going to have empathy for trees? You can. I look at a tree. I have a tree right here in my living room, and it's different from me. But if I can't not have empathy to Natasha, to Margot, to Ao, to Bruno, how can I relate to this tree? So I think one of the most terrible things is that we don't really. We need to rebuild the space of silence where listening and dialogue can happen. The medium is like we don't have the proper water where the fishes of dialogue can circulate. We need to rebuild the water, the conditions.
Something comes to my mind, like a question, because along like in my work, sometimes I see beautiful testimonies or beautiful stories also, but I'm asking myself to which public is it directed sometimes. And I feel this question also of public is very important, because I often encounter people that or public that were telling me, yeah, but it was too complicated, or I don't understand, or even though like the story for me was kind of very not graspable, but I also realized that because I work also with art and also storytelling, and actually storytelling through food also with artists, because I believe it's important to have tools that are accessible and democratic to actually understand those stories. And I think food is a very beautiful medium for that. And sometimes, I'm wondering how is the best way to I don't know. I'm just this question of public sometimes that is difficult. Because we cannot talk to everyone. I mean, I don't think so, because we have language is very like divisive in a way, unfortunately. And even though even through art with images, sounds, videos, still the language that we use to communicate or to put in the world those contents are already in a way divisive. So I don't know if you have something to say about that, about who should we be speaking to and how can we like include more, or I don't know.
No, pardon. So now we're talking about accessibility, which is another phase. I don't see it in a linear way, so I wouldn't say it's the phase after the story or the phase before the story. There's no before and after, but eventually there is this question of accessibility that comes to place. And I was talking about, like, I'm very interested in this topic because as a researcher, you can get lost in language and then you can become very complex. And because you've been digging for so long the same spot, you're so used to it. And then you're just in your own world, and then you become almost disconnected from the rest of the world. And it becomes very challenging to bring that information back. So how to make it as accessible as possible. But then a good friend of mine asked me, like, who are you trying to reach? Like, think of who are you trying to reach? And to me, I was like, I'm just trying to reach whoever I can reach. There is no elitism in it. There is no specification. I don't want to segregate, or I don't want to minimize the echo. Like, I want to reach wherever it echoes. And that's, to me personally, this is how I think of accessibility.
Sorry, I lost you. I'm sorry.
It's
I'm
all
back.
right. Welcome back. Where my thought ended was, when I think of accessibility, I think of wherever it can echo. I don't want to segregate. I don't want to like speak about to a specific group, or a group that can understand a certain language, like beyond demography, just like in terms of classism, sexism, age. There is no way to select, just wherever it echoes, and then be as accessible as you can. Yeah, that's my thought.
That's beautiful. I'm so inspired. Like, many things are coming up. So I heard you speaking, Margot. We can't, what was it? We can't talk to everyone. Exactly, speak to everyone. And this stick to me. And then I connect to what Luciana brought up, I think, before, that perhaps we cannot talk to everyone or speak to everyone, but we can listen to everyone and anything. And that makes me think of the tree as well. And when you really tune in into listening, then perhaps maybe you don't understand even, right? There's barriers of understanding, but just by entering into the space of listening, then perhaps some experience can take place and something will echo from there, even if it's not understandable. But yeah, it just made me think of this exercise of switching from presenting and speaking to listening. And then maybe something will come from there. It's maybe a step towards something else. This is what came.
I really like what Margot said about food being a language. And it's very interesting that when you go to a place that you don't know the language, you start expressing in other ways, but also if the person offers you water or food, that's communication. And I think that's, we really need to build other types of communication that are not so mediated by language, like food, like dance, like music, so that we can beforehand feel. And then maybe I can learn French and talk to you, but that's secondary because I already went to your house. I already looked in your eye. I already tasted your food. And that came beforehand. And the same thing is with nature. I don't know how to speak the language of water, or at least I don't know that I know. I was I was taking a course last week with an ecologist here from Brazil, and she said, "Touch the water, talk to the water with your hands. The water likes when you touch it and you just playing with it. So talk to the water," she would say. And I was like, "Oh my God, I never thought of that." I never thought that my body was talking to the water when I go into a river or when I enter the sea. Oh, it was there was a little drop, but I don't know if you understood my point.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
I think we are. That's the reason why I thought, oh, I'm going to this English speaking room, although I haven't spoken English in a while, just to have a taste of people that are really far away, or else I'll end up in the same bubble that I am. So it's really nice to feel that I enter a little bit your world, and that we can be far away and close at the same time.
Then to echo what Breno, now it's all a flow, so there is no need for names anymore. Just to echo what is being said, there is the idea of speaking to the water, and then there is the experience of listening to the water. So when I was in my early 20s, I started doing like experiments with water to be like, how can I understand water? Like putting water from one vessel to another, letting water get get sucked by my clothes. And I was just trying to like see what it reflects back at me, like how does water speak? So how can I listen? And there is such a good accidentally, there is such a good reflection. Now I have this book nearby, and I really love this drawing. But then water becomes reflection. This is so in the allegory of the cave of Plato, when the prisoner gets out, and we were talking about being in prison before. When the prisoner finally gets out of the cave, the first thing that they do is look at their own reflection in the water. Like water reflects so much, and if you listen to it, it has so many lessons. The way it moves through cracks, the way it always finds a way, the way it dries, the way it overcomes obstacles, the way it gets absorbed, the way it gets in the flow. So there is, in that exchange of listening and speaking, in that movement, there might be something that we can't say with words.
I also I wrote two things before coming, because I was not like, the goal was not to be prepared, but I wrote two things. So what is reality, right? And then what are the story that we want to leave behind us also, which is something that moved me a lot when I think about if I want to leave like a story to also the next generation, what is the story about? And then it kind of made me think about a certain sense of purpose, right? Because sometimes I feel very motivated. I'm like, but what I'm doing has no impact, or those kind of days. And then I think just about this sentence of at least I'm trying to leave a story that I can be proud to also tell to other generation. And that doesn't necessarily mean my story at all, but is then I also discovered that for me was also maybe amplifying stories of others rather than telling mine, because we've been like, I think hearing a lot of the story of this part of the world. So I think it's also a moment to give space and amplify other voices. And it's a sentence of a thought that every time that I'm a bit down, I kind of repeat myself. And I think we sometimes underestimate also the stories we're leaving behind and our agency. So yes, that was just a final thought maybe on my side.
Yeah, I do agree. I think most people or creatives rather think, do I make any impact at all? I can be quite stuck in that. I really want it, but do I do enough? And there's been a while that I thought maybe I should go into politics, and then I thought, oh no, that's nothing for me. I can actually have more impact with stories because it's what I love. Um, and then sometimes, I don't know, a dear friend of mine said, no, I think the same as Al. I think you said it. Like, if you changed one person, you don't even know. Sometimes you don't even know. And if you change one person, maybe he or she will pass it on to another one, and they will pass it on. And that's actually the most beautiful thing. You never know where your stories or the things you do or the things you do with food. I think it's wonderful indeed. I think food can connect very much, just like music and art. Um, I think you do more than you think often. And just to take the time, I know we live in it. I do agree also with Luciana. There's so much going on, and you want to change everything at once. And I think we need to speak up at least, but at the same time, not forget that it also needs time, and the world can only become more beautiful person by person by person. And if you do a little thing, you do more than many others, and I think you will inspire a lot of people.
I just want to let the group know that we have 10 minutes before closing. So we can keep the flow as is, or we can find ourselves kind of slowly letting it fall. Yeah, I want to add a quick point that is echoing now is like Luciana said, like we don't know that we know. And I think that the not knowing your impact, like we do not know, as Natasha said, we do not know how much impact we leave. And we are stuck in our own ways. We are stuck in language. We are stuck in our experience of knowledge. And it's a multi-generational effort that we do. So Margot, when you speak of like leaving traces for the next generation, that's something that we've been doing, implementing ourselves within that path. And then again, I would come back to the water, like that huge river of people that are just falling through time, going through time. And as a racialized person who grew up in France, for me, it took so long to just be like reconnected to that generational flow. And France Fanon is someone who helped me very, very much. And what echoed the most when I was around 18 is this idea that out of sheer obscurity, each generation must recognize what they can do. And that's something that we must all do. The emancipation of the generation, recognize, oh, now in that urgency, like Luciana is speaking of in Brazil, or Natasha in your exchange in the Middle East, like we must all recognize within our generation now, what can we do? And it comes from obscurity, definitely. When there is no light, and then you have to find your own light. And that light shines the light for the next generation, and it keeps on going and it keeps on going. So, yes, this is what is.
I think we are finishing, and I would like to add a word that is humble. I think we have to be very humble because we can only change ourselves in the end. The great mission is to change this being that is the result of generations of history, of migrations, of everything that has happened before you. And we can only change ourselves, and it's a hard enough challenge. So that's what I was thinking. Change your own water. Remember that your water change the way you deal with your feelings. And maybe everyone that is in touch with you will be touched by your change. And sometimes it's difficult to be humble like that because you want to change everything. I'm talking for myself. I sometimes say, oh no, I can't stand that. But at the same time, I wake up and I do my yoga and I say, okay, it's hard enough to reach my feet and be humble and, do something that my body couldn't do 2 years ago. So I would like to just leave that word so we don't forget that we only can tell stories from where we are, or from our standing point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, act at your level of influence. It's also something that's was very powerful recently that I read in a magazine. Act at your level of influence, and that's already a lot. And with each position, try to make the most of it. Like as a director, some of food culture days, I realized sometimes that it was already difficult to, in the structure, like keep this those value of humility, listening, of generosity. I mean, it should already be embodied in the structure that the structures we're working in, to then go into the world. So it's definitely like a inside out and not outside in, and that becomes more and more clear. And but at least when we are attentive to that, then we can change it. But maybe before it was less clear. It was first, I wanted to change the world, but the structure is not yet there, and you're not there yet. So it's kind of it really resonates what you say, but it's a beautiful work. I find very empowering, and thank you for this beautiful conversation, guys.
So I want to make a last note also. First of all, thank you. I really enjoyed it. Also, what we're doing, indeed, we don't even know each other. We're in different parts of the world and we connect. It can be easy like that, even online. So that's wonderful. And for the rest, I think, how I live is be a sharp observer. So don't deny, what is going on in the world and what's going wrong, but also be hopeful. Because I always think you cannot, I quote, I think Martin Luther King, you cannot fight darkness with darkness, but only with light. And that's actually, if I bring a little bit light in the world that maybe reaches only one person, you never know, I think I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll grab it. Also, just a last note, it was a very beautiful time in space together with people I also don't know. And I leave it with a sense of tuning in my senses into what's happening and really exploring further what listening is. Like this image of learning to listen to the water, I think will stay with me, and how this can be an experience really, and what can I then create from there. So thank you very much.
I leave with the feeling of the universe experiencing itself. Like I remember reading this from time to time. I would read research and this sentence would pop here and there, and it kind of sticks always, that we are the universe experiencing itself. And the randomness of this connection here enhances that feeling that it's just the universe experiencing itself. So I'm very thankful for everyone and for being so vulnerable and just sharing your thoughts, thinking out loud together. If you want to do a quick checkout, just grabbing the virtual stone one more time and just saying how you feel free. And then I will play the closing sound, and that would be us for today. You're mute.
So I feel grateful.
I feel connected.
I had the same word as Margot. Grateful. It was very nice to wake up with you today.
I will say flow, being part of a flow.
I feel in harmony. Then I will play the closing sound. Merci.
Thank you so much, Ao, for this beautiful facilitation, and Marco, Natasha, and Luciana for participating. I am just posting here on our chat a link that you can just briefly tell us how your experience was for us to get a feedback on it. We'll also send it via email a bit later, but it's always nice when it's fresh and you can really just pinpoint how this experience was for you. So I guess that's it. Thank you so much. It was lovely to connect and stay in touch with the further dialogues. There is 9 more dialogues happening, 4 today and 5 tomorrow.
Can I ask something, Breno? Is it possible to have just like, because I'm very curious for what you do, guys. Like, do you have just a contact or a link or something that we can share in the little box, or?
Yeah, I can. So the idea was that before it's a surprise who is coming.
Yeah,
so we have
exactly.
this element of freshness, of not
Totally.
knowing. But what we're going to do now in the next email that is going to send, we're going to have the contact and the names from everybody in the session.
Cool.
So there's possible to exchange there as well.
Amazing.
Super.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a lovely day. Ciao.
Bye, guys.
Ciao, guys.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.